by and large, it moves quite quickly.
The one cautionary remark that I would make it relates to Central Plains water.
Yeah, that's right.
Where that is being developed in 3 stages. But I think the crucial issue for Central Plains water will not be the water price. It will be the nutrient cap that has been set on the scheme as a whole. And stages 2 and 3 will have, in my view, difficulty proceeding within the nutrient cap. But Bar Hill Chertsey, which is a scheme that is currently being developed on the inland plains south of the Rakaia, which those councillors who visited the South Island earlier in the year would have seen a presentation about that, and their water price is slightly north of ours when pressure is included in our price. They have similar pressure, but they do not have to build a storage, and yet their price is the same as ours, and they are fully subscribed.
One. The date of financial close, Mr. Chair, on point 20 on the precedent. Financial close 30th of June, is it?
We'd like it to be then.
Is there a hard date that the financial close, or is this sort of approximate, just going to slide backwards and forwards? I'd like to be clear on that.
Do you want to answer that, Andrew? I don't think we can be absolutely precise about the date.
We're certainly, I think from our perspective, we're targeting 30 June.
Yep.
There'll be a judgment call to be made by a number of parties. Take for example, if there's one condition precedent issue outstanding, that's not closed at June 30, then I think every investor and their shareholders would sit there and ask the question, well, okay, is there a window of another short window to deal with that issue? And that would be a sensible decision to make at that point.
But equally, if all the conditions precedent were satisfied by the 15th of June, and the parties were willing to say they've been satisfied, then financial close could happen earlier than the 30th of June. I have to say, I think that's unlikely.
That's unlikely.
But it's possible.
And Council won't make its decision until the 25th of June, so it's highly unlikely.
So let me choose a better random date, the 26th of June.
It's fair to say the team doing the work would be dead by the end of it if it was the 15th of June.
All I want to know is that there's a clarity in people's mind that there's going to be a close at some point. Plus or minus a little bit, I accept that.
Last one, Councillor Bevan, then I'd like to get to the recommendations if we could.
Thank you, Chair. I think there's a matter that's not perhaps particularly well understood by the public, which is that saying no to this dam is actually not to stand still, it's actually to go backwards. And I think that you have quantified the economic hit to Hawke's Bay at about $50 million, which is basically the consequence of Plan Change 6 being adopted and the increased flow in the Tukituk, lower reaches of the Tukituk that's required, which is one of the benefits that's espoused by this scheme, which will supply a lot more water into the lower Tukituk. And as everyone knows, the plan is to have flushing flows which are released from the dam during dry summers, and that water will increase the flow in the lower reaches. It's a huge act of faith in my mind to accept that releasing 1 million cubic metres of water 50 kilometres upstream will end up with the increased flow that we need to meet Plan Change 6 in the lower reaches of the Tukituk, especially given what all of our scientists in this building tell us, which is that they don't understand the aquifers on the Ruataniwha Plains. So how can we be certain that that water is actually going to deliver the benefit that we're looking for, which is one of the chief features of the scheme?
There's
two points I think that we need to make, and Stephen, I might get you to help me out here. But the first point about the flushing flows specifically is they're not designed to deal with the lift and minimum flows. In other words, the lift and minimum flows, which creates an irrigation ban at an early stage in an irrigation season, is a function of a cumulative rate of flow across a period of time. The flushing flows specifically are designed to deal with removing algae and slime from the river system, so they're quite targeted. I think, Councillor, that's the real point there. The other point, when you get to does the storage scheme improve the overall flow regime? Well, I think the point, and Stephen, correct me if I'm wrong, is that it does in an extreme year, because it has to release a certain amount of water from the Makarora reservoir, which increases the overall flow above what it would normally be in an extreme year, for a start. So it does it through that. And then in this particular case, you'll have seen there's been work done and underpinned by science from NIWA, which also says that full uptake, there's a recharge and a groundwater recharge process going on, which actually lifts or damps down the effect of irrigation takes in the Ruataniwha Basin. So it's through those mechanisms whereby the overall flow regime improves. And the final point I'd make, ultimately subject to water demand actually, is that there's irrigable land right down the main stem of the Tuki. Obviously some of it's currently irrigated at the bottom end clearly, which is the area that's being most adversely affected. But equally there's a significant amount of irrigable land right down the main stem, and subject to expressions of interest there in time, then the scheme distribution network's been designed to move water down that way. So therefore there'll be a tranche of water sitting in the river for a whole lot longer period.
Can I just check that your question has been addressed, Councillor Bevan?
Well, it's a revelation to me, because I thought the flushing flows were designed to improve the total flow. You're saying it's not for that purpose at all, that there's increased water in the river at all times. That will help. So
the flushing flows are specifically designed, and I think I've spoken to Council twice about this already, designed to assist in managing periphyton. But Stephen...
That's correct. The flushing flows are for that periphyton clearance function, of course, and they're designed to piggyback on natural freshers. So HBRIC's taken advice from NIWA and Cawthron as independent advisors, both in terms of the flows and the effects of those flows in terms of removing periphyton, and we're confident with that advice that they will be effective, and they're targeted and triggered by certain timeframes of build-up of periphyton. Of course, during the period of the flushing flows, there will be more water in the river for a period, but that wouldn't sustain long-term low flows more than sort of a few days. Andrew's point about the fact that the scheme does uphold river flows right through the river in those very dry periods, with basically adding more from the dam that would naturally come out of the Makarora catchment in those dry periods. So that's the benefit it gives for the minimum flow, holding the flows up over those dry periods.
And your modelling tells you that that's sufficient amount of water to meet the minimum flow rates required at Reed Bridge, for instance?
No, the dam's not holding up the minimum flow, in totality, no. It just adds more flow out of the Makarora than would normally come. If the river gets to a very low flow, the minimum flow will kick in, and as it does now.
Thank you. Councillor Scott.
Questions around the conditions precedent. One condition that you don't consider as a precedent is the workability of the nitrate levels within the Plane Change 6 and its effect on uptake. Presumably, you would see that simply in terms of the volume of uptake in the initial stages, but could we end up with a situation where we can achieve the initial uptake, but the conditions of Plane Change 6 affect any likelihood of full uptake?
So if I can refer Councillor Scott to 20.1, which talks about the resource consent being a condition precedent recommended as being workable by all investors. Yes, I understand that, but the
Asking specifically about the effect of a different decision on nitrate levels in the plan.
So if I can be precise, the workability of a resource consent that may or may not be granted is entirely down to what Plan Change 6 says. So I think that is entirely encapsulated in the phrase workable.
So you happy to take us to the recommendations, Councillor Scott?
And I'm happy to move the recommendations with a couple of very minor amendments, Mr. Chairman. I would like to move all the recommendations except for two, that instead of notes, that we change that word to refers the business case to Deloitte.
So which one is that?
Page 10 of the agenda, Mr. Chairman.
Refers to Deloitte.
Refers the business case to Deloitte's.
That's number 2, yes. And your other change?
To undertake an independent peer review. So if we can just get that wording.
Yes.
Refers the business case to Deloitte's to undertake. And then the other very minor word change is in 4.5 to take out there are, because it reads by, and it should just read by 6 substantial. So it's just a little bit of wordsmithing.
4.5. By take out there are.
So with those minor amendments, Mr. Chairman, I'm very happy to move those entire recommendation.
So we have a second, Councillor Dick. You happy to second that? You wish to speak?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to thank the board for their presentation this morning and for the actual preparation of the business case. I certainly, as a councillor, understood the process was a step in the way, and that we're not debating the pros and cons of the business case at this stage. We are looking for some expert, independent, and I do put a real stress on that independent advice from the people we have selected. In this case, it's Deloitte's that we went through a process to select them as our advisors. I do note on the notes that are added to this within in the recommendations in 21.5 and 21.6. It does point out that the contribution to the economy and to the environmental gains will not be achieved if this does not go ahead. But I'd also actually like us to consider, and I will be bringing it up during a later paper in the council, and that's in our risk analysis, that actually it's not that that's going to be generated, it is actually that we're going to be going backwards. And I think there is no two ways that we have to be very aware, and that's why I will bring it up under our risk analysis later in the day, the impact of that. However, at this stage, I think the process is very clear. We had already discussed with Deloitte's when we discussed the appointing them, all the background information that they would be delving into. And so at this stage, to formally refer this business case to them and is the process that we were in, and I have no hesitation in saying that I came to this meeting fully aware of the process that we were in, and that I look forward to getting that response and being able to delve into what Deloitte's bring back to us.
Thank you. Councillor Dick, you wish to speak?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to congratulate the authors on a very thorough, well-written, easily understandable report. But I see it as Chapter 1 and look forward to reading Chapter 2, being the Deloitte response.
Thank you. Other speakers? Councillor Belfin.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move an amendment. I have it with me. It can be distributed. It's a one-page amendment. In moving this amendment,
I'll speak yet.
Okay.
Need a seconder.
Oh,
People need to read it. Have you read it, Councillor Barker?